I have a dream, that's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning. These ladies know that I'm sinning, and this is just the beginning. I'm closing in the ninth inning. There ain't no point in resisting. Living life like a dream, live it right, that's the thing. Every night, got a team, I've been tied to the scene. Out on stage, here I'm screaming. Okay, it's a dream, and I pray as a team. One day, it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get it. Head down, don't regret it. Push myself to the limit. If I play it, then I win it. I'm just saying, I'm just living for today. For a minute, I don't stay, I just visit. Have no shame, I admit it. Looking at me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe. They're looking up to me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me. To God, man, I'ma make it soon. Silence all the haters as they see us making moves. I do what I want, so I got nothing to prove. Staying motivated, teaching others what to do. I'm staying focused, my mind is open. They start to notice that I'm in motion. There is no potion, you're not just chosen. It takes devotion to stay composed, man. Never stop, there ain't no time to fall. Try to live, get it up, you got one life to ball.
Oh, I love Netflix. All right, so we are doing multi-topic week. We're going to finish off the heavy topic from last week. We will be doing that later today. We're going to start off with some easy ones. What's going on this week? Pope Francis has made it clear that his blessing of people is not the same as blessing of same-sex unions. The helicopter went down in, I believe, Saudi Arabia, and there's a question of whether it was the CIA, whether it was Masada, or whether it's just a real accident. That last one doesn't seem too likely, does it? I know. Let's see, what else is going on? Jimmy Akin is now joining Inspiring Christianity to try to save his channel and keep him on the Catholic path, as it were. It's kind of sad there's a monetary aspect to that, but it is what it is. Anything else missing before we get started? I think that's all the major stuff today. All right, let's get into it. I knew it was going to do that. All right, so let's go. Hopefully everything plays in order.
In this video, we're going to analyze Frank Turek's response to a question.
And this, remember, this channel is dedicated to anti-apologetics, and that's what we are doing today. Randall Rouser is delving into his own anti-apologetic. Oh, that's what I forgot to say. My review for the Jimmy Akin, Trent Horn versus two random Protestant debate on justification is done. The script is over. It took me 3 days to write that script. I had to rewatch the debate. I watched the debate twice. It's a 3-hour debate. It took a long time for me to get it summed up in a way that's not too long. And believe me, even summed up, it's still going to be a 20-minute video. So anyway, so that's coming out later this week after I film it. I would film it tonight, but I have work early in the morning, so I'll have to film it tomorrow afternoon. Let's keep going.
Or at a recent event. So the gentleman here has asked, how do you distinguish between signs from the devil and signs from God? Turek's answer, I think, is interesting because think the way that he frames his answer really promotes what is in effect, if not in intent, an indoctrinational framework. So let's take a look at the first.
So we're looking at an indoctrinational framework. I think it's good to watch these kind of videos because apologists use a lot of tactics and tricks. I noticed in the debate between the Protestants and the Catholics, one of the Protestants in particular was trying to be really honest. I believe his name's Dr. Bryce. But the man, Samuel, was using nothing but apologetical rhetoric and had nothing to stand on. Jimmy Akin has his own process going on, which is interesting to watch. And Trent Horn was a mixture of apologetics and debate tactics. And I think Trent Horn probably did the best of all four people on the show. And then Jimmy Akin, I think, won the debate. So anyway, that'll be tomorrow's review. But it's important to know these tactics so that way you can be aware when someone uses them on you, so you don't get brainwashed or gaslit into believing something you don't actually believe. Jimmy Akin's very guilty of this. He'll have the Protestants, he'll force them into a train of logic or a line of logic, and then they have to agree to a later point to be able to hold their first point, and it's not actually something they assent to. I think that's kind of shady. It's very good and very interesting to watch happen on a debate. It's not so cool to do to someone when they're trying to figure out their actual beliefs.
First part of his response, and then I'll pause it and come in and offer some critical comments.
Yes, so when we say satanic signs, that's what we mean, that there is a dark realm out there. There is a dark side that can do lying signs and wonders. And Paul says, if it was possible, they'd even be able to pull away the elect if it was possible. So we have to be very clear when we see something unusual to figure out, is this thing associated with truth and God, or is this thing associated with demons and falsehoods?
That's my question, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be aware of. Is this something that's going to affirm the current revelation that we know is true, or is this thing going to disconfirm it? And if it's going to disconfirm it, it's not.
Well, I think if we already get started, you already hear several presuppositions that God is real, that the New Testament is correct and true, that our version of the New Testament is the correct version and all the versions are wrong. So, and anything that's wrong is of evil and of the devil. These are all presuppositions. I know they seem like easy conclusions, but these are all presuppositions that are being laid out. So you can't just be wrong. It has to be of the devil, that kind of thing.
Not from God. In fact, when people...
Let's talk for a moment about indoctrination. So indoctrination is contrasted with education.
I want to say this, that originally I did not enjoy Randall Rousel when he first came on the scene. I found him a little bit too liberal, a little bit too woke. And this is even when I was basically a liberation theologist, Christian or Catholic. So even then I found him too liberal. As I've aged into my audience and into my stances, I have found much more respect for Randall Rousel. He's very honest, and he's walking a very fine line between academia, apologetics, and theology, and I appreciate him more the older that I get. Maybe he's just getting better at what he does. Who knows?
Education and indoctrination both give information from a teacher to a student, but they do so in different ways. Education does so in such a way that, if properly done, it equips the student with critical faculties to evaluate the teacher, the information they've received, and to continue to do so going forward, so they become a critical thinker. Indoctrination, by contrast, provides information in a student teacher transfer manner such that it undermines or erodes the ability of the student to critically introspect information received by the instructor or information going forward. And that's the key difference between education and indoctrination.
I want to hear
Now,
that again.
indoctrination they've received, and to continue to do so going forward, so they become a critical thinker. Indoctrination, by contrast, provides information in a student teacher transfer manner such that it undermines or erodes the ability of the student to critically introspect information received by the instructor or information going forward. And that's the key difference between education and indoctrination. Now, indoctrination, one of the common features of indoctrination is a very sharp binary, a contrast, a dualism between insider and outsider, and information that is confirms what the insiders in the community already believe is going to be assessed as valid. Information that comes from the outside and challenges in some manner the.
So I want to see if I understand this correct. In Randall Rouse's estimation, teaching is an exercise or a gifting of critical thinking, while indoctrination or apologetics is the repetition or repeating without necessarily the understanding of the dogma. Am I understanding that correctly?
Information already accepted by those on the inside is going to immediately be censured, doubted. There's going to be skepticism presented toward it. And that is a way of maintaining an indoctrinational frame.
By the way, next week, I think we're going to be doing Protestant Week, because I know that I promised to be doing that. So I think we're going to do Protestant Week next week, and then 2 weeks after that will be Islam.
Framework. So, for example, in an indoctrinational framework, you'll say, like, well, don't listen to those people out there. They're just liars, right? Or they're of the devil, or they're all stupid or ignorant or something like that. And you do that, and then you've now inured or protected, in essence, the individual within the belief community from having their beliefs challenged by outsiders, because you've already undercut or poisoned the well of any information that could come from the outsiders.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it undercutting. I would say it's poisoning the well.
Perspective. And that's what makes it indoctrinational. It protects the current ideological framework. And that is exactly what Turek does here, whether with intent or unwittingly. I'll leave it for others to decide, but it's clearly the way he frames the answer to the questioner from the audience. So the questioner is asking, how do you distinguish between God and truth versus the devil and darkness and lies? And the way that Turek frames it is he says this: if anything comes to us, any information comes to us, and it confirms, quote unquote, what he calls current revelation, then that is good. That is of God. It is true. But if any information comes and disconfirms or challenges or is inconsistent with or contradicts, quote unquote, current revelation, then that information is evil. It is false.
And those kind of presumptions and presuppositions, I think, are apologetical tricks. It's framing the argument to where you're always right and your opponent is always wrong, or in this case, of the devil.
It is a lie. And based upon that, you can know, you can distinguish between God and the devil, truth and lies, knowledge and falsity. Or
Yeah, this is othering. This is differing. Yeah.
Confusion. Now, one of the key problems here, in the simple indoctrinational manner in which Turek has given this answer to this questioner, is that he never defined what he means by current revelation. What does that mean? Well, here there's a key contrast, or a key failure to make a contrast, a conflation, I would submit, between two different things: what God has in fact revealed versus our current understanding of what God has in fact revealed. And if you cannot make that distinction, then you now are yourselves absolutely subject to this indoctrinational framework. So, for example, Turek is an evangelical American conservative Protestant. His understanding of current revelation is reflective of his evangelical American conservative Republican Protestantism. So,
I don't know if I agree with Randall Rouse's assessment here. I think it is, when you fall into these kind of presuppositions, you are given into your biases, whether these be preconceived notions or whether these be biases of your inculturalization into whatever your belief system is. I don't necessarily think that is the same thing as indoctrination, or in this case, apologetic tactics. I think if you believe something, even if it's part of groupthink, it is a truly held belief. I think to be able to parse out the difference between individual thought and groupthink is much harder to do. You'd have to get Frank Turek alone and talking about an other religion that is just like Christianity that holds all the same beliefs and see if he assents to those beliefs even though they're not of his same group. And I think that would be very hard to do. It would be an extensive psychological experiment that I don't think would be ethical.
There are all sorts of ways that information can come from outside his belief community, which could challenge his current understandings. For example, some of that could come from within the wider Christian community, which disagrees with Turek's understanding of current revelation, quote unquote. It could come from outside of the Christian community altogether. It could involve something like evolution, right? Like evidence that God created through evolutionary processes. It could count evidence that, in fact, maybe there's nothing wrong with same-sex relationships. It could be evidence that maybe a Christian is best off voting Democratic for the Democratic Party in the next election. It could be evidence for the moral complexity of abortion. It could be evidence that people shouldn't have access to firearms or that Christians should be pacifists. These are all things, by the way, that I'm listing because they are inconsistent or they challenge Turek's current understanding of current revelation, as he puts it. But because Turek has already set up.
Is it a false assumption, though, to assume that Turek is a Republican and a conservative just because he's an evangelical Christian and an apologist? That might be an assumption on your half. Just like we talked about in the Eva Lupine video. Well, Turek might be presenting arguments in a specific manner. He may have repressed ideologies in his mind that he expresses in his personal life that he does not express to his audience at large.
This framework to say anything that challenges your essentially what is in essence not just current revelation but your understanding of current revelation is of the devil, and it's a lie, and you can reject it. That has set up his audience now to become indoctrinated. And I just want to close by pointing out how much of a stark contrast this is with a truly Christian perspective. And I think the truly Christian perspective that I've
when you start seeing a truly Christian perspective and you start doing a No True Scotsman, which, by the way, I'm a fan of the No True Scotsman. I don't believe that that is a fallacy. I disagree with those who say it's a fallacy. I think there is qualifications for a true Scotsman. I think when you start diving into this, though, you fall into the realm of what's your definition of a Christian versus what's the definition of a Christian from, let's say, the Bible or from some other objective source than yourself.
I would give to us here to conclude is Paul's encounter with the Bereans in Acts 17. Paul.
Why does everybody go to the Bereans? This is not something that I ever ran into. I mean, I've read the Bible, but I'm saying it's not an argument I ever ran into until I came onto the internet. Oh, that stupid fucking hard drive. If you see me glitch, I have a hard drive connected to an external hard drive for movie editing, and I forgot to disconnect it. So every time it runs, every time it reboots or whatever it is that it does, you're going to see a little static. Sorry about that. I'll disconnect it for next time.
Comes to this Jewish synagogue in Berea, and he is preaching a gospel, an understanding of quote-unquote current revelation that is fundamentally at odds with that accepted in the Berean community. They believe in a conquering Messiah, for example. Paul is preaching a Messiah who was crucified by the Romans and rose again to new life. Of course, by implication, they were teaching understanding of the revelation of a resurrection at the end of history. Paul has now come and is proclaiming a resurrection in the middle of history. They had an understanding of current revelation where there is a fundamental contrast between Jew and Gentile. Paul is now preaching to them a gospel of inclusion of Gentiles into the community of God's people. These are some of the examples of points where Paul is fundamentally challenging the understanding of the Bereans in Acts 17. If the Bereans had Frank Turek come the week before Paul came, what Turek would have told them was anything that disagrees with your understanding of current revelation is of the devil. And then when Paul comes, they would have concluded, okay, Paul
His Frank Turek isn't very good.
is of the devil because he's challenging our understanding of current revelation. But instead, what they did was search the scriptures to see whether what Paul said was true. In other words, they looked at relevant data sets of evidence relative to the claims being made to evaluate whether those claims were in fact warranted by the evidence. They did not conclude a priori or in principle or prior to looking at the evidence that something could not challenge their understanding of current revelation because they recognized both things. I think. One is that human beings are fallible and our understanding of reality on this side of eternity is always limited and open to revision and open to correction. And second, that God is infinitely greater than us and God can do new things and reveal himself in new ways that challenge our current understandings.
So I'm going to agree with Randall Rouser here. I usually don't agree with him. So like I said, maybe he's growing on me or maybe I'm maturing. I don't know which is which. Okay, let's go on to the next video. Okay. Oh, a nice commercial. This is why I'm doing these like screen jumps now. I don't know why this turns me blue. I don't get it. I don't understand what this is. I don't know what this blue haze is. It looks cool. It's just, it's weird. It's a weird filter thing going on. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Does he have his little logo? Does he do his little logo? Oh, he stopped doing the logo. Okay, cool. Well, then I'm going to go back to the beginning. All right, here we go. Next video. And again, we're doing anti-apologetics for those who don't know what we do on this channel. We're calling out the bullshit, even if it's from people that we like or agree with. And this, my friends, is Father Mike Schmitz. I'm glad. I think he's starting to stop dyeing his hair. And I think he should stop dyeing his hair because he's a priest. He should stop giving into vanity.
Here's a kind of a simple message, but I'm a simple guy. So my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. If you were raised Christian or raised Catholic, sometimes people
That's me.
can say that. The only reason you're Christian, the only reason you're Catholic, the only reason you're in the church, the only reason you have faith is because you were raised that way. I mean, it might be true for somebody, might be true for some people, but you guys, we live in an age where a lot of people
He talks fast, and I have it fast forward, so now it just feels like we're in like a Ritalin caffeine rush.
are raised Christian. A lot of people are raised Catholic, and they walk away. So to accuse someone of just, oh,
Yeah, and I walked away when I was 13, and I didn't come back till I was 33.
the only reason why you believe what you believe is because you were raised to believe it. That discounts the
I was a
fact that
practicing Taoist for over 15 years when I was teaching martial arts as a personal trainer. So, and I married a Chinese atheist. So,
it might even be the case that the majority of people who are raised to believe in Jesus Christ, the majority of people who are raised to be Catholic, end up saying no. In fact, I worked with youth, young adult, middle school, high school, college age people. I've seen a lot of young people who were raised Catholic who walked away. I see a lot of young people who were raised Catholic who stay. And I see a lot of people who are raised with nothing and become Catholic. And so it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, there's more at play. I think there's more at play than just, oh, you believe it because you're taught to believe it at such an age, right? I think there's something else happening.
so far, I agree with him. He hasn't hit apologetic levels of bullshit yet. I agree with what he's saying, and I think what he's saying is honest enough.
I have a question. Do you know Jesus well enough to reject him? Now,
Ooh, that's a good apologetic twist. I like that. I like that. I like that. Lay down real truth. And then, bam, gotcha. Okay, so what was his question again? Do you know Jesus well enough to reject him? Interesting ploy. I like it. It's apologetics. It's definitely apologetics. But it's a nice ploy. Let's see where he goes.
So yeah, of course I do. I was raised in the church. I was raised Catholic. We had to go to mass every single day. I went to Catholic high school. I went to Catholic elementary school. I went to Catholic college. Great. Okay. They heard a lot.
And this is also true. So he did a little bit of apologetics. Now he's back to truth. So just because you went to Catholic church every single day, just because you went to Catholic high school, just because you, I don't know, did something semi-religiously affiliated like CCD or church camp, that does not mean that you know Jesus or that you understand the Bible. If you haven't read the Bible yourself for yourself, then you haven't read it. If you're going to Mass and you're daydreaming or you're thinking about other things, you're not getting the entire Bible. You're just hearing the bits and pieces of the missal they get through your imagination while you're thinking about something else. So no, just because you went to Catholic school doesn't mean you understand Catholicism. Sorry. You actually have to read the books and study and know them. Not just read them, but know them.
About Jesus, or maybe actually the fact is they might not have heard anything about Jesus. And sometimes we have volunteers who teach and they're doing their best, and sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're just doing their best, and it's not that great.
Sometimes they're terrible and don't know what they're saying and give bad information. Sometimes your parents who are supposed to catechize you at home don't have the proper information because they never got the proper information or they misunderstood the information. So yeah, hard truths, hard realities.
And sometimes we're the ones who are the problem, right? I mean, I was the problem. When I went to religious ed class, man, the teachers, the volunteers were great. They were awesome. I was the trouble student. Like, I was the one who had all the objections. I was the one who had all the questions. I was the one who wanted to distract everyone from off the topic. So the problem was me in this case. But even though I went to Mass, even though I went to religious ed, even though I got involved in youth group and whatnot, even though I went to Catholic elementary school, I did not know Jesus well enough to reject him.
So for me, it was a little different. I was born Catholic. My mother and my dad were doing non-denominational Bible study when I was a little kid. So that was my orientation to the Bible. My only Bible readings were from 3 different children's Bibles that I didn't even read all the way through. Or if I did, I don't remember doing so. And then after my mother died and we moved to a much nicer neighborhood, my dad wanted to watch football games on Sunday with my uncle, with my mom's brother. And so we started going to a Spanish language Mass. So I got nothing out of that. I knew how to stand, I knew how to sit, knew how to pray, knew how to make the sign of the cross, got my first communion, but going to Spanish Mass did not indoctrinate me at all or enculturate me at all into the Catholic faith.
I only knew Jesus well enough to reject my idea of him. And my guess is this. My guess is the majority of people who were like, I was raised Catholic and I got the heck out of there as fast as I could. I have to ask, okay, did you know Jesus well enough to reject him? It might be the case that the answer is yeah. The answer is maybe yes. Maybe that is the case. I don't know. Because Jesus, even when he was living on this earth, people rejected him. Our God's a big God. He can handle it. But do you know Jesus well enough to reject him? Or was it this? I just didn't know him well enough to accept him. There's a very different...
So, in actuality, you can reject anyone or anything at any point during any relationship, in any way, before it starts, when it starts, at any point. So while the question is an interesting question and a thoughtful question, it is rhetorically nonsensical. Beautiful. Something I might even use myself if I'm talking to an atheist who's trying to defame the faith or Jesus. But it's still a rhetorical trick and still apologetical. But Father Mike is not above apologetics.
different things. Did I know Jesus well enough to reject him, or did I just not know him well enough to accept him? I think the
So he switched premises.
majority of us fall into that second camp. The majority of people who leave
You don't know him well enough to accept him now. So again, he's moved the goalposts and he's switched premises.
the faith are in that second camp where like, no, it's not like I knew him so well that I'm like, yeah, all these Jesus' teachings, I know them, and I'm just going to outright dismiss him and say, I hate you. I wish you were dead. I'm glad you were on that cross. I just didn't know him well enough to entrust my whole heart to him. I just didn't know him well enough to give my life to him. I didn't know him well enough to say, you're my rabbi, I'm your disciple, you're my Lord, and I'm going to follow you.
So I knew people who had rejected Jesus when I was in high school and junior high, but mostly in high school, who they were angry at the faith. And they would purposely disrespect the faith and be sacrilegious toward the faith. And any type of Christianity, didn't matter what kind of Christianity, they just hated right off the bat. And any mention of goodness or sweetness or forgiveness would upset them. And I don't think they had a good understanding of the Bible. I don't think they read the Bible. I think maybe they went to Catholic school for a little bit, or to some Protestant school, or some Christian school, non-denominational school, maybe for a semester or so. And then the rest of the time they were in public school. But they hated the Lord, and they hated Christianity, they hated the faith, and they hated the Bible. And if you asked them why, they couldn't give you a direct answer. They'd give you just generic complaints that you hear from TV, or nowadays what you hear on the internet, but they couldn't give you an actual point reason from their own perspective. And I think that a message like this, which Father Mike is giving, which is very interesting, is missing that aspect. It's not addressing that part of teenage rebellion, because this seems to be a very teenage rebellion focused episode. I don't know too many adults that live this way. I know some, but this is usually a teenage thing.
Let's reframe the question. For all of us who might struggle, for all of you who might struggle with, okay, I was raised Christian, I was raised Catholic, I had to leave. Or I was raised Christian, I was raised Catholic, and I just stuck around. questions.
Yeah, that's another issue is that those who are Catholic in name only, they go to church, but they don't really believe. They pray, but they don't really know what they're praying for. They're doing it out of habit. Maybe they believe in God, maybe they don't, but they're not living the Catholic tenets. They're not active in their faith. It's a dead faith, if it is faith at all. That's another problem. That's not being addressed in this video.
When you left, did you know Jesus well enough to reject him? Or did you just not know him well enough to accept him? If it's that latter, right? If it's the second one. If it's just that, actually, I think...
This is very clever. I'm not doubting Father Mike's intelligence, but I wonder if he actually thought this or if someone wrote this for him, because there's a lot of cleverness in this video.
About it. I never really encountered Jesus when
Because if Father Mike is this clever, he needs to be writing books.
I went to Mass. I never really encountered Jesus when I went to Catholic school. I never really encountered Jesus when I went to religious ed, or I'm part of a Bible study, but I never really got to know him. If you want to know who Jesus is, you want to know Jesus' heart, pick up Matthew or Mark or Luke or John. Just open up the Bible, open up the Gospels, and just say, okay, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. Now, if you're even more really desiring of, I want to know Jesus so I can reject him, or I want to know Jesus so I can accept him, here's another thing.
I know a lot of people who read the Bible ready to be upset about it, and then once they actually read the New Testament, they actually either become Christian or at least give up their anti-theism or anti-Christian bias. Maybe they might still have a problem with authority, maybe they might still have a problem with the church, but Christianity itself, they usually let it go, and they become less hostile. I know that's not always the case. If you remember Jake and Hannah, and I don't remember what their original show was called. Obviously, there's people who can read the Bible and not get anything out of it. They're just there to mock. But some people are actually listening when they read it.
You could go into your local Catholic church, plant yourself in front of the tabernacle every day for 3-4 weeks, 30 minutes a day. And while you're in front of Jesus in the tabernacle, just say, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. Jesus, show me your heart.
And I guess he's my spiritual advisor now. We switched priest. So I guess he's now my spiritual advisor, has advised me to do that, to go to the tabernacle during my off time and just sit there and pray. So we'll see how that goes.
Heart. Jesus, show me your face. Let me know who you are. I'm telling you, if you were to do that, I have a very strong sense that Jesus will. If you go in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, in front of Jesus in the tabernacle in a Catholic church, you just pray on a regular basis and don't skip, don't miss. If you do miss, get back there.
I like how he has to stress in a Catholic church. What if I'm going to go to an Orthodox church? Huh? They have valid sacraments. Sweetheart, I'm doing a show. It's okay. Do you want to be on the show? Here, come here. Come here. Come here. Here we go. Here, you want to talk? Go ahead. Go ahead. You've been talking. Come on. Talk to the audience. No? You don't want to talk to the audience?
You'll be able to say, Jesus, please, I'm not going to distract myself. Jesus, just reveal yourself. Because it could be the case, as I said, that I just didn't, or you just didn't know Jesus well enough to reject him. You also didn't know him well enough to accept him. So, get to know him. Get to know him. And then you'll be free to actually reject him. Or get to know him, and then you'll be free to give him your heart. You'll be free to accept him.
The only thing is that goes a little bit against those who believed and did not know me, or those who believed on faith alone without evidence and proof. So that does go a little bit against that. But as far as apologetics go, this is roughly inoffensive, and I like it. If I'm going to endorse apologetics, I'll endorse this kind of apologetics. All right, let's live screen it again, and then let's go to the next video. Woohoo! For those wondering, the name of this cat is Squish. I found her squished against a column outside of a comic book shop, and I saved her. She was a baby kitten, about the size of my palm, and we kept her in a box in the comic shop for about 3 weeks. Nobody adopted her, so I went ahead and took her home after 3 weeks. Oh, you're doing this. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. Next video. For those wondering, this is called veiling.
I think a lot of young people are like just really lost. And some of us,
I'll be honest, I've never seen anyone actually pray the rosary while in Mass, while doing the liturgy. That's not really a thing. But that's interesting that they set up this shot.
have found or reclaimed a meaningfulness through establishment, like through this institution of the church, but mostly through relationship with Christ and with each other.
You know, when I was in college, some of the sense of doing Eucharistic
What was that? Book of what? What was that? What's going on there? This isn't a Mass. What is this?
adoration was seen as something like, oh man, that's really radical. In the last
You know what would be nice is if the churches started opening up for the practice of the Liturgy of the Hours, even if it's only a small group, if it was only like 10 or 20 people at a time, you know, have a morning office, have midday office, and have evening office, plus have the Mass during the day, but have it open to the public so that way people can participate, the lay can participate. That would be cool. I want to see that happen.
20 years, that pendulum has swung far to the
Chaplain,
right. Interest in that, for example,
Reverend. That's interesting. A reverend at a Catholic church.
the traditional Latin Mass, that is a real thing. And we have it here on campus, and it's a pretty significant group.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this team as they start practice. Give them the virtues of fortitude.
So conservative Catholics and trad Catholics are a little different than the actual everyday Novus Ordo Catholic.
Of courage, of perseverance, of tenacity.
I am completely unaffected.
Young women now who are wanting to enter religious life, they want to enter full throttle, and they want to be like brides of Christ. And to wear a habit is to really signify that every day.
And Brides of Christ and non-religious wearing of the habit is something that Eva Lupine was talking about in her video, which I know lost me a few viewers, and I know some people are not watching today because I made that video. It was a good video, and Eva Lupine had some quality points. A good way to know the truth is to look at what your enemies are saying of you, because they don't have any reason to lie to you. They don't have any reason to be nice to you. They don't have any reason to be kind. You want to get a real assessment of where your faults are and where your weaknesses are, ask your enemy. They will tell you.
Okay.
Not that Eva Lupine's my enemy, but she's definitely not, at least as far as I know, not a practicing Christian or Catholic. And I think she's atheistic, or at least agnostic in her presentation. Although if she's still a practicing Catholic, she's more than welcome to come on this show and talk to me. Or even if she's not, I'd gladly talk to her. They're considering becoming nuns.
It's just like a renewal of
I always love that line. I know it's in multiple movies and TV shows. I wanted to be a nun until I found out what nun meant.
some good, like what good we had, some really, really good things.
So I recently was accosted by the Mormons. There's a Mormon temple here. They actually came up to me when I was going for a run. It was two beautiful women, ladies on bikes, and they invited me to go to a church service and to go to a meeting. I did the meeting, I didn't do the church thing, and we talked religion and theology for about an hour. There wasn't really anything convincing. They did want me to pray with them, and they did go over some basics of the Book of Mormon, which we are going to have a Mormon week here, but I have so many things that I have to do before we do Mormon week, so that could actually be maybe next year before I get to the Mormon stuff on this channel.
Things that we might have lost.
Lord, make haste to help me.
So, for those who are Catholic and watching this, what is your opinion on Latin versus Orthodox versus the three fingers? I like the three fingers thing. Right, there it is. I like the three fingers, which represents the Trinity. I think that's cool. I think that's cool. I think we should have that in the Catholic Church. I think it shouldn't just be an Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox or Eastern Rite thing. I just think it's cool to have the three fingers represent the Trinity as you make the sign of the cross. I think that's cool. Also, what's your opinion on the Jesus prayer? I've been saying the Jesus prayer before I go to communion, and I find it really, really helpful. I really like it.
There are a lot of things that are non-negotiable to a lot of us who are faithful Catholics. We don't believe that the church will ever say that like contraception is acceptable. Women priests is something that can be like kind of unsettling. Homosexual marriage is something that like, and a lot of us are battling with that because like now we have a lot of friends, or like we go to school and we just meet a lot of really good people who are.
I'm going to be kind of a jerk. Does it look like she has a lot of friends, or does it look like she's completely indoctrinated already into humility and Catholic minimalism? Minimalist? I think she's already there. I think she's already pre-nunhood. She's already, at least here in her presentation, she's given up the makeup. She's part of a rad trad or conservative Catholic movement. I don't think she's out drinking or going out partying or hanging out with the atheist and the Wicca and the witch and the other interesting people you meet during college. I get the feeling by her presentation and by her wording that she's not doing that. But who knows? Maybe she is doing like Christ and hanging out with the sinners. Who knows?
Are queer, and so a lot of us are kind of like wrestling with that. But that is not something that will change within the church.
No, it won't.
What we see now in U.S. Catholicism is...
I'm playing my little cat's tummy like a conga drum, and she's just loving it. This started because she would make biscuits on me all the time, so then I started making biscuits on her, and then she got more aggressive, then I got more aggressive, and now she'll jump on my lap, and I'll play bongos on her, and she loves it. It's like a little massage. I don't know why she likes it, but she does. And if I stop doing it, she'll start meowing.
A more polarized church, but also a very interesting phenomenon of a globalization of Catholicism in the United States, meaning a Catholic church that looks less like Europe and more like Catholicism in countries of Latin America or Africa, where there are really strong tensions between.
And I think that is true. We're moving away from a Western Europe more to an Eastern Europe, Latin American, African version of Catholicism. And I attended a African Catholic Mass while in China. And that was interesting. They actually flew in as kind of a protest Mass. And I participated in that. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever done. Yeah.
What it means to protect the family at the legislative level or legislate on LGBT rights.
No, you're not going to catch it like that. The Church of the Future in America is definitely going to be more orthodox, more follow the catechism, and possibly even a form that goes over.
I don't think the future of the Catholic Church in the United States is the Latin Mass and traditional old world Catholicism. I don't think that's actually the case. But it's nice to hear them say that it is.
Over the top on some of those things. But I think that the divides you see in Catholicism more or less fall along American political lines in this country. So I notice that a lot more these days, for sure.
It's important.
So what I've noticed in my practice is that most active Catholics now seem to be drawn more and more to the Eastern Mass and to Greek Orthodox thought. There is more knowledge or acknowledgement of the Church Fathers than there used to be, and there's more Bible reading than there used to be, and there's still plenty of lay Catholics who have no idea about what the Bible says outside of what is read to them in church. And there's still plenty of hypocrisy in the world to go around.
To look at that movement not in terms of how many, because these are in many cases small numbers, okay? But the most important thing is the intensity.
So this thing says is that the conservative movement has been angered by the Pope's more liberal views. The Pope's not a liberal. That's just something People who don't listen to what he says say he says.
As Catholics, I think we're obliged to love the Pope and to like not speak of him like some political figure that did stuff we didn't like.
There has been no reconciliation between this pontificate and many US bishops who see this Pope really as someone who doesn't get America. And so this is going to make the moment when Pope Francis resigns or dies very interesting, because clearly there will be, from the United States, the push for something very different from Pope Francis.
Okay, let's... dispute that. Sorry, I was distracted with my cat. Okay, here we go. Next video. Okay, we're back to the tough stuff. Okay, here we go. Let's get to 12. Hold on, honey. Okay, there we go. All right, we're back to a hard video. We are back to the end of Gavin Ortlund's discussion of war, rape in the Old Testament, as discussed in the Old Testament, or whatever. Let's do it. Here we go.
It's for the good that I didn't edit out the garish parts of that. I can reassure you, no more physical descriptions. I know some of us find it hard to take in. There are times in my study of this, it is kind of nauseating. But we need to know what happened. So maybe it's good that I left that in, but we'll just move forward now. But the point is this: Israelite war practices can only fairly be appraised in that historical context, rather than comparing them to, after World War II is over and the modern world and so forth. In that context, the ancient Israelite practices were different. There's no glorification of sexual violence. On the contrary, there are these restrictions that are designed to curb away from those kinds of abuses. There's absolutely no battlefield rape, for example, that which was extremely common in the ancient world. Now, some scholars dispute that, and they say, well, Deuteronomy forbids rape after the battle is over, but doesn't say anything about rape during the battle, so the Israelite soldiers were free to do that. And this is one of those readings that's just overly cynical and just wrong. That's not...
I agree with Gavin Ortlund there that that's an over cynical reading once the law's changed. But again, there is the whole part of all this is written post fact, after the fact, so we don't actually know what happened during the actual period, because this isn't reflective of the actual reality. This is like the romances.
A good way to read the Bible. It's an argument from silence, and it runs contrary to the entire tenor of the Old Testament. Okay, this wouldn't make any sense to have this strict 30-day waiting period after the battle is over if the Israelite men had been free to pillage and rape and so forth during the war. No. During Israelite warfare, the Ark of the Covenant, an object of extreme holiness that mediated God's presence, would be taken from the temple onto the battlefield, carried by the priests. The understanding is the Lord is going with us into battle. And believe it or not, battle was considered an act of worship, a holy act unto the Lord. And from that point, the Israelite men are in a sacral state. Okay, so for example, they could eat the consecrated bread normally given only to the priests, and they were forbidden from any kind of sexual activity. Any kind of sexual activity would require a kind of ritual cleansing, as you can see in Deuteronomy 23, for example. And the Israelite practice of complete abstinence from all sexual activity during battle can be seen in David's comment in 1 Samuel 21, 4-5, where he's speaking to the priest Ahimelech, and he says, basically, women have been kept from us as always when I go on an expedition. You can also see this in Uriah's refusal to sleep with his own wife when David is trying to coerce him to do so on the grounds that he's in battle. And it's like he's saying, we're in the middle of a battle. How could I go and do that? So for the Israelites, sex and battle are completely separated from one another at God's command. And then after the battle, for other nations, a lot of times what would happen is female prisoners of war would be made into temple slaves, where unfortunately sexual exploitation would be an ongoing feature of their life. And this is true both in ancient Mesopotamian contexts and in the ancient Egyptian sources. We see this. So like in the ancient Mesopotamian context, you have the goddess Ishtar, who's the goddess of war and sex. And basically a lot of prisoners of war are made into temple prostitutes to fund the temple. And I won't go into that here. In terms of, I don't want to be too lurid in this, but I'm trying to convey these horrific truths enough that you get the picture, but not go too far, which is a tricky thing. In ancient Egypt, you have these so-called houses of women, where basically women, prisoners of war, were brought, and the essential purpose is a kind of industrial production of slave children. So they're just basically there to produce as many offspring as possible to become slaves. Okay, so you got that kind of stuff going on in the ancient world. All of that is strictly prohibited in Israel. There's absolutely no temple prostitution. There's no ritual sex in the temple as there was in the pagan world. Sex and worship are completely separated, just as battle and sex are completely separated. The alternative for the Israelites is Deuteronomy 21. Okay, and again, you start to see when you're looking at that context, and then you're looking at this passage, you're starting to see, oh, that's the kind of stuff it's prohibiting and saying you can't do. And it's more fair to judge it in its context than like in the modern world. The first and most obvious difference here is the requirement of marriage in verse 3. Okay, that's the first coming out of our context. Someone might say, oh, how terrible that, you're just being forced to marry or something like that. But arranged marriages are the norm. Very few people chose who they're going to marry in the ancient world. And what I want to do here is go through the three features of this text that initially might seem to people like, oh, that's so terrible. And I want to show that there's actually a redemptive element in each of them. The first, and this will be to finish off, first, the 30-day waiting period. Second, the removal of hair, cutting of nails, and changing of clothing. And third, the stipulations for divorce. And in each case, you might initially think, oh, that's so terrible. And then, especially reading it in line with Matthew 19:8 as a regulatory law, but you see how much actually progress is being made here. We benefit today. I'm going to say this. Some atheists watch my channels. Thank you for watching. I know you don't like to hear this. I got to say it. It's just, I think it is so true that we benefit today from the changes that were made in the nation of Israel.
Okay, so I've made this argument before in debates against atheists. I'm going to ask you, my viewing audience, do you think this is an apologetical argument, or do you think there's grounds for what me and Gavin are saying when we say this, that the way that history has been written, the way that things have played out, we do benefit from Christian and Jewish thought. We are influenced by Judeo-Christian thought. And to say that we're not, I think, is a lie. I think it's very clearly, very obvious that the Western world is influenced by Christianity and Judaism. And to say that we're not, I think, is ridiculous and goes against the evidence that we have in history. If you think this is apologetical, or you think this is somehow baseless and just rhetorical wording, give me an argument for why it is rhetorical. I want to know what your objection to this argument right here is, as I agree with Gavin completely on this point.
Israel that started dominoes falling. Okay. I've said that elsewhere. I'm not really going to get into that here. Okay, let's talk about these three things. First, the 30-day mourning. Now, a lot of discussion about this. A lot of people say, how terrible. Only a month? You've just ripped this person out of their community and now they only get 1 month to grieve. Another concern is more at the scholarly level. People say, they read it cynically and they say the purpose isn't really to allow her to mourn. The purpose is to make sure that she's not already pregnant before you marry her. But I don't think that's right. And a lot of people actually in the scholarship as well push back against that. First of all, just the explicit statement of the verse in verse 13 is to allow for mourning. But beyond that, a time frame of 1 month doesn't really fit with other purposes that are commonly put forward, like making sure that this woman is not already pregnant. That's not enough time. And you can see some of the rabbinic interpreters saying that 3 months. So 3 months is the time that would be necessary to address that concern. Okay, now, give the text the benefit of the doubt. If it's saying it's for that, it's for mourning. Now, someone's going to say, only a month? That's way too short. Her husband might have just been killed and she only has a month to grieve. Okay, again, in our context, that's a very understandable concern. But in the ancient world, a week was more of a common, culturally accepted grieving time. So, and if you want more about this, by the way, take a look at this book on pages 16 to 23. It just goes through and shows how commonly is this 7 days and 7 nights mourning ritual, both outside of Scripture and then also in the Bible. I'll put up this example from the book of Job. The book goes through 5 other examples as well. So the point is, again, in that historical context, it's not the way it sometimes can seem to us in our historical context. Actually, there is a recognition of a relative to that time, longer period of time allowed for mourning. Okay, but what about the shaving of head, paring of nails, removal of clothes? Someone might initially look at this and just think, how degrading, this is horrible, you're taking away her dignity, you're taking away her beauty, you're taking away her culture, and so forth. But at that time in history, those actions served 2 purposes. One is a mourning ritual, and the other is cultural assimilation. The book I've quoted from earlier, speaking of these 3 acts, says these 3 rituals fit within widely practiced mourning customs of the day and are most likely connected to the month of grieving and waiting period. Just like the month-long time of grieving is a way of acknowledging the real grief she's enduring, So this is a process of kind of ritualized grief and transition and assimilation into a new community. Just think how opposite this is of celebratory rape, which was the common practice of the day. Okay, this is an ancient way of trying to push against that and allow for a process of entrance into a new community. Someone might say, well, why do this at all? Why not just leave her alone? Again, I think we have to appreciate the historical context. In that time, to be without a family and potentially without a community, you may have had very low chances of survival. You can see this, for example, in the book of Ruth, the way Naomi reacts to her daughters-in-law when her husband dies and their husbands die, and she's trying to say to them, go away, I can't have any more children. Do you want to stay unmarried? And you can feel a little bit of the sense of the desperation that you'd be in that context to be without a family. Okay, thirdly and finally, what about these stipulations concerning divorce? Again, at first reading, it's very easy to look at this and just say it's absolutely barbaric. Again, in that historical context, you can actually see pushing against the powerful party and in favor of the vulnerable party in this prohibition. It's saying if the marriage does not continue and it ends in divorce, this is a prohibition against treating her as a slave. On the contrary, the photographic negative of that is she is a free woman, an Israelite. She has all full rights of a full status of a free Israelite woman. And the rationale for that in these final words is since you have humiliated her, or some translations say since you have dishonored her. This is placing the
there's a lot of gravity there. Hold on, Tex. I'll acknowledge your comment in 1 second. So I do feel, though, that there is room there for, on the translations that have the word dishonored, for it to be viewed as she has been sexually violated, because you do have that one night of passion that you can take. Or in this case, if you're a slave woman going to your slave husband, you don't have autonomy in any type of way to say yes or no to consent. So I would have to know what, and I hate to sound like this because I'm not someone who believes you have to go back to the original language and everything, but I would have to know what the original language verbiage is there. Is it dishonored? Is it, with all the implications we have in English for that word, is it, satisfaction? Is there some other word that's being used there for her to, for this grieving process? What exactly is going on with her emotionally according to the text? Okay, and then text said, if you have been scammed, and then having a real God would be better than a fake God. Writing. Tux, can you explain that one just a little bit? I'm not really sure how to respond to that comment.
Responsibility and blame on the party with power and reflecting a concern for the dignity and the status of this woman. And in the ancient world, that is remarkable. Chris Wright says the law, in the midst of the nastiness of war, is trying to privilege the needs of the vulnerable, a woman, a foreigner, a captive, over the customary rights of the powerful, a man, a soldier, a victor, a husband. So yes, this is a tough passage. It does not reflect a timeless ideal. This is not what everybody should do in every place, as Jesus teaches us in Matthew 19. But can you see what it's pushing against in its historical context? Can you see what it's trying to do? Trying to say, no, don't do what all these other nations are doing. You can't treat women in these barbaric ways. You have to wait. You have to marry her. She becomes a full member of the community. She's never going to be a slave. And that last little phrase, for you have humiliated her, you can feel something of the character of God in that. Because as you look at Deuteronomy 21, then you step back and you look at it in light of the entire scripture.
Tux, if you're listening, can you rephrase the comment that you gave? I'd like to respond to it, but I don't have a respond for the way it was worded.
Again, like watching the entire Star Wars movie. Okay, see it all in context. What you have is a story about a God who shows remarkable compassion for the vulnerable. All throughout the scripture, God is always choosing the outcast. It's always the people in this world that are discarded.
I agree with that. The Bible constantly goes with the second son. The Bible goes with the child that's been outcast, thrown away, given away, if you will. The rejected people. Those who left in exile from from Babylon, from Egypt. To me, I think it's clear that there's something else going on here than just an honor culture or choosing a hierarchy of, what is it that Dan McCullen said in that video? Hierarchy of something power, hierarchy of power. I don't feel that's what's going on in the Bible. I don't get that when I read it through. Like I said, I've read it front to back 7 times. I've read it piecemeal, who knows how many times. I mean, I was Catholic I was going to church as a kid from when I was baptized until I was 13. Attended a little bit after that. And then I have been practicing the Liturgy of the Hours and going to Mass, which means I'm reading the Bible sometimes 3 times a day, because you have to read passages when you do the Liturgy of the Hours. And then I'm participating in the Mass, so I'm actively reading or actively listening to the daily readings and the weekly readings. So you combine all of that with the actual reading through of the Bible, plus all the theological content that I digest, whether it's through YouTube or through the Church Father writings that I read. And I agree with Gavin's estimation here. So I don't see the cynical view that a lot of the scholars, quote unquote, secular scholars, seem to get. And I say quote unquote because not all of the secular scholars are actually secular. Just FYI.
The world
For the haters
says,
out
you're
there.
no good. You'll never amount to anything. You know, you're not important, and the world just tosses that person aside. That's the person God is drawn to. God cares about the vulnerable.
Yeah, Moses stuttered and was an outcast. Abraham lived with his parents until well after the age he was supposed to have left. And there's a lot there.
I think of this with Christ and the dignity with which he treated women in his context.
God himself took on the form of a slave and was a servant to mankind instead of the other way around as it's supposed to be. So there's a lot going on there, and Old Testament and New Testament, that there's a lot there.
Text. Also a
But
context
loving
in
the
which women were
outcast
very
and the
mistreated.
outsider.
And for some reason, and I'll finish with this, the story of John 7:53 to 8:11, even though there's textual concerns about that story.
And it's not just loving the stranger like it is in the pagan world, where you might accidentally be running into a god and you don't know that it's a god or a goddess, so you have to treat them well. This is more, although there is a little bit of that in Old Testament Genesis stuff with the angels, the divine strangers, and possibly Melchizedek too. But throughout the majority of the Bible, there's not that present, and usually the outsider is just an outsider, and it's good that you've honored them, whether it's a prostitute or a slave or a eunuch. Honor the stranger.
I think it's consistent with the character of Christ, or
Protect the
reflected in the
outsider.
Gospels. It came to my
Be
mind,
kind
and
to
this
the
is where
widow.
the woman is caught in adultery. She's brought forward. Of course, the man isn't. You know, there you see again the tendency of human sin to target and single out the vulnerable person.
And on that story, and I know that one of the big actual scholarly anti-apologetic, anti-theist types has made a big deal about it. But these stories are showing a kindness. They are showing, yeah, it starts off rude. Yeah, it starts off with how people would actually act, and then it becomes divine. That's the whole point, is that it puts you in a situation where you would be in, where the normal beats of the story are, this is what happens, and then God or Jesus or the other main character that's being, that the spotlight's on, does it differently, and it's doing it differently, and it's doing the weird thing, the good thing, the kind thing that shows God's kindness and embrace of the outsider, embrace of the widow, the protection of the orphan. That's the whole point. And the fact that so many scholars get caught up in the first part of the sentence and not caught up in the second part of the sentence, where everything gets turned around and the whole concept, the whole precept gets flipped on its head. That's the point. Not the first part where everyone's like, yeah, that's what a human would do. It's the second part where it's like, oh, wow, they were kind to the stranger. They're sacrificing for the stranger. They're washing the feet of the stranger. That's where the magic happens, if you will. That's where the theology is.
But of course, Jesus draws attention away from her. And I preached on this passage. I have a lot to say that I love about this passage. But I'll just put my finger on these simple words of when he says, I do not condemn you. Go and sin no more. Can you imagine?
And again, it doesn't matter if it's a later edition. It's consistent with Christian and Jewish thought.
I mean, just let this strike your heart. Can you imagine what it would be like to look into the eyes of God incarnate and hear him say to you, I don't condemn you? Can you feel, and go and sin no more? Also an equally important part of that, so we don't get into free grace here. Okay.
Oh, I love that Gavin took a shot at free grace. I like Gavin a lot. I wish he would just get over his icon and papal nonsense. I'm not expecting him to become a Catholic, but I think he could get the Eastern Orthodoxy. I really think he could if he can just get over the icon thing.
Can you feel Christ's recognition of her humanity?
Maybe we can get him into Anglicanism. Maybe. I don't think so, though. I think though we could get him into Orthodoxy.
That. Can you feel that his compassion and his awareness of her dignity and his treating her with a human being, treating her?
Of course, God can do anything. So I don't know. Maybe we could get him. We could get him to be a Catholic. We'll get him and Jordan Peterson on the same day. How's that sound?
As a human being, this is something that the gospel does to us. It treats us as human beings. It gives us dignity. It actually, forgiveness of sins is one way of getting your dignity back. Some of you watching this video may be so guilty and so shame covered because of things that you've done or that you continue to struggle with. It actually is a way of sort of robbing your humanity. And when the Bible speaks of righteousness being imputed to you, forgiveness of sins, God, the covering with clothing is one image that is used for that. And I'll just leave you with this thought. I'd love to just say this, even though I know some atheists watching this video won't believe in any of this, but I can say what the Christian message is to you. And for Christians, maybe this is something that could be an encouragement for you. What the gospel of Jesus Christ ultimately means is Jesus says to every single penitent sinner, I do not condemn you, go and sin no more. What that woman experienced in that moment, that's the message of the whole Bible. Basically, there is a God and you can be restored to him through Christ. And that's, what that woman felt, okay? When God in the flesh is looking me, seeing me, treating me with dignity and saying, I don't actually despise you. I don't condemn you. I don't hate your guts, like all these other people do. Go, change. That's what the gospel does for each of us. It's the most beautiful story you can even imagine, let alone if it's true. And I say,
let alone if it's true. A little bit of tinge of apologetics at the very end. Okay. So for this whole week, we might only be doing hour-long videos. I open at my job for this whole week. I have to be up at 6 a.m., which means me going to bed at 1 o'clock like I normally do probably won't work. So it might be a 1-hour show this whole week, with an exception on Thursday or Friday. I might try to do a 2-hour stream. Thank you all for watching. Once again, don't forget my message I try to give all the time. God loves you. God forgives you. Forgive everyone for everything, including forgive yourself. I love you all, and good night. Tux, it was good seeing you today. I know there was a few people watching in incognito mode. I appreciate you. I do have a Patreon. Go support me there. There will be links. There will be... I'll start doing stuff on there. I think I'm going to start doing either one-on-ones once a month, or I might do a special episode where you get to do the topic and we'll do an interview with each other, and that'll be what will show up as the weekly topic video. Either one of those might be happening. I appreciate all of you guys watching. I appreciate your support. I know a lot of you guys didn't like the Eva Lupine video. I don't shy away from controversial topics, and I don't plan on doing that anytime soon. My channel has been everything from suppressed to shadow banned. I'm not going to change just because a topic's not popular or it's uncomfortable for people. I like watching what I like watching. I like talking about everything, and I love debating, and I love being challenged. That being said, everybody have a great night. Tomorrow night, we're going to be doing more multi-topic stuff. And next week, we're going to be doing Protestantism. It's going to be mostly concentrating, assuming that he doesn't do any copyright claims, we'll be doing mostly Jordan B. Cooper next week. And then 2 weeks after that, we will be doing Islam. It's been good, guys. Things are going well. Things are getting better in my life, and I really appreciate all of you. My short film released on YouTube. It's out. if you want to watch it, there's a link on my community page on YouTube to my Secret Alt channel. It's the channel that the production company that I'm working with is posting their videos. There's other shorts on there that are terrible. Please don't watch them. But do go watch this movie. It's 8 minutes. It's a short film. It's really good. And I hope you all leave lots of comments and lots of likes, because the actors and everyone who helped us out in that film deserve credit and deserve accolades. Thank you all, and good night.
Thinking big, never small, cause you gotta want it all. When you finally get that call, you get ready, take it on. Need a handout, I already stand out. Starting to advance now, ready to expand now. You don't have a chance now, cause we're in demand now. Make it by the grand now, feeling in command now. They're looking right at me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe. They're looking up to me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.